Her house was perfect until she realized she'd disappeared inside it. Claire Morrison's home looked like it had been photographed for Architectural Digest every single day for the past 15 years. Not a cushion out of place, not a surface that wasn't gleaming, not a single item that existed without purpose, position, and perfect aesthetic integration. Her 3,000 followers on Instagram agreed. At Claire's clean life had become a destination for people seeking inspiration for minimalist perfection, where every carefully curated photo showcased a life so organized, so beautiful, so flawlessly maintained that it seemed almost inhuman. Which was, Claire was beginning to suspect, exactly the problem. At 41, Claire had achieved everything she'd set out to create. A marriage to David that looked perfect from the outside, a career in interior design that allowed her to impose order on other people's chaos, and a home that served as the ultimate expression of control over an inherently uncontrollable world. But standing in her pristine kitchen on a Tuesday morning, staring at the precisely arranged fresh flowers she replaced every 3 days, Claire felt a disturbing sensation she couldn't name. She felt like a visitor in her own life. The feeling had been growing stronger for months. She'd catch herself walking through her own home, like a museum curator checking exhibits, making minute adjustments to maintain the illusion of effortless perfection. She'd spend entire evenings cleaning things that weren't dirty, organizing spaces that were already organized, perfecting arrangements that were already flawless. When had her home stopped feeling like a place she lived and started feeling like a place she maintained? The morning routine had become a ritual of preservation rather than preparation. Claire would wake at 5:47 a.m. precisely, make the bed with hospital corners so sharp they could cut paper, arrange her skincare products in exact order of use, and ensure the bathroom appeared as if no human had ever occupied it. By 6:15, she was in the kitchen, where the coffee maker had been programmed to finish brewing exactly as she entered. The previous night's dishes had been washed, dried, and put away before bed, so there was never evidence of actual living. She'd drink her coffee from a cup that matched the day's aesthetic. Tuesday was white ceramics with gold trim while planning the day's maintenance schedule. Which surfaces needed attention? Which rooms required fresh flowers? Which Instagram photos needed to be staged? But on this particular Tuesday, as Claire stood in her picture-perfect kitchen, she couldn't remember the last time she'd cooked an actual meal instead of arranging food for photography. The crisis came on a seemingly ordinary Thursday evening. David arrived home from work to find Claire on her hands and knees, scrubbing grout that had been cleaned just 2 days prior. She'd been at it for 3 hours, using a toothbrush to achieve the level of precision that industrial cleaning tools couldn't provide. "Claire," David said gently, "the grout is clean. It's been clean for years." Claire looked up from her work, and for a moment she couldn't remember why she was on the floor. The compulsion to clean had taken over so completely that her conscious mind had simply disappeared. "I know," she said, but her hands kept scrubbing. "I just need it to be perfect." "It is perfect. You're perfect. The house is perfect." David's voice carried a weariness that Claire had been hearing more frequently. "Everything is always perfect." The way he said the word perfect made it sound like a curse. "What's wrong with perfect?" Claire asked, finally stopping her scrubbing. David sat down on their pristine living room couch, careful not to disturb the arranged pillows. "When was the last time you sat on this couch just to relax?" Claire considered the question. I sit here all the time. To take Instagram photos, to arrange magazines, to dust the coffee table. When was the last time you just collapsed after a long day?" Claire couldn't remember. The couch was for display, not comfort. Their bedroom was for photography, not intimacy. Their kitchen was for staging, not cooking. They'd been living in a museum of their own creation. That night, lying in their perfectly made bed with hospital corners so crisp they could cut paper, Claire stared at the ceiling and asked herself a question she'd been avoiding for years. When did perfect become more important than happy? But what disturbed Claire most was realizing she couldn't answer the question, because she'd forgotten what happiness felt like without the validation of external perfection. The session with Dr. Elena Vasquez felt like a betrayal of everything Claire stood for. The therapy office was comfortable but imperfect, lived in chairs with slight wear marks, books that weren't arranged by color or size, a coffee table with actual coffee rings. Claire spent the first 10 minutes mentally reorganizing the space. "What brings you to therapy, Claire?" Dr. Vasquez asked, seemingly oblivious to the visual chaos surrounding her. "I think I might have a problem with control," Claire said, the word feeling foreign in her mouth. "My husband says I'm too focused on keeping things perfect." "What does perfection mean to you?" Claire brightened. This she could explain. "It means everything has its place. It means beauty, order, peace. It means creating an environment where nothing unexpected can happen." "And how does it feel when things aren't perfect?" The question triggered something visceral in Claire's chest. Anxiety. Like the world is falling apart. Like I'm failing at the most basic requirement of existing. Which is maintaining control, keeping chaos from taking over. Dr. Vasquez made a note. "Tell me about your childhood home." Claire's expression darkened. "It was chaotic." "My mother was overwhelmed, always behind on everything. There were piles of laundry, dishes in the sink, papers scattered everywhere. It felt like we were always one disaster away from complete collapse." "How did that affect you?" "I decided I would never live like that. I would create a life where chaos couldn't touch me." "And? Have you succeeded?" Claire looked around the imperfect office, feeling agitated by its casual disorder. "Yes. My home is exactly what I envisioned." "But how do you feel in that perfect home?" The question caught Claire off guard. "I feel safe, protected. And what else?" Claire was quiet for a long moment, wrestling with a truth she'd never articulated. "Empty," she whispered. "I feel empty. Tell me more about that emptiness." "It's like I've created this beautiful shell, but there's nothing alive inside it, including me." Dr. Vasquez leaned forward slightly. "When was the last time you felt alive in your own home?" Claire tried to remember. "I don't know. Maybe when we first moved in? Before I had everything organized?" "What was different then?" "We had boxes everywhere, furniture in the wrong places, nothing matched. It was messy and chaotic and—" Claire paused, surprised by the word that came to mind. "Exciting." It felt like possibility. "And now?" "Now it feels like a museum. Beautiful, but untouchable." What Claire couldn't tell Dr. Vasquez, what she'd never told anyone, was about the room. In the basement of their perfect home, behind a door that looked like part of the wall, Claire had created what she privately called her chaos room. It was the only space in the house that wasn't photographed, wasn't cleaned, wasn't organized. It was where she kept everything that didn't fit her perfect aesthetic. Childhood books with torn pages, art supplies she never used anymore, clothes that were comfortable but unflattering, letters from friends who drifted away as Claire's life became increasingly curated. Sometimes, when the pressure of maintaining perfection became overwhelming, Claire would sit in the chaos room and remember what it felt like to exist without constantly monitoring every detail. But even the chaos room had become too controlled. She'd started organizing it unconsciously, cleaning it despite her intention to leave it wild. It was as if her need for control had infected every space she occupied. But Dr. Vasquez wasn't finished exploring Claire's relationship with control. "Claire, tell me about a typical day in your perfect home." Claire described her routine in detail. The precise timing, the careful maintenance, the constant vigilance required to preserve the illusion of effortless beauty. "How many hours a day would you say you spend maintaining perfection?" Claire had never calculated this before. "Maybe 4 hours? 5? What would you do with those 5 hours if you didn't need to maintain perfection?" The question opened a void in Claire's imagination. I don't know. I can't remember what I used to enjoy before this." "Before what?" "Before perfection became my full-time job." Dr. Vasquez made another note. "What do you think you're protecting yourself from by maintaining such rigid control?" "Chaos, judgment, the feeling that I'm inadequate." "Inadequate at what?" "At being an adult, at having my life together, at being worthy of being seen." The admission surprised Claire with its honesty. What if being seen included being seen as imperfect? That's not acceptable. According to whom? Claire opened her mouth to respond and realized she didn't have an answer. The rule that messiness was unacceptable felt so fundamental that she'd never questioned its origin. "I don't know," she admitted. It's just how things should be." "What if it's just how things are for you? What if other people can be happy without being perfect?" The idea was foreign enough to feel like a different language. During their second session, Dr. Vasquez introduced what she called imperfection experiments. "I want you to try leaving one dish in the sink overnight," she suggested. Claire felt immediate panic. "But what if David sees it? What would happen if David saw a dish in the sink?" "He'd think I was losing control. He'd see that I'm not actually competent. Have you asked David what he thinks about the perfect house?" Claire realized she hadn't. She'd assumed his silence meant approval, but what if it meant something else entirely? That evening, Claire tried the experiment. She left a single coffee cup in the sink and went to bed, lying awake for hours, anxiously imagining David's reaction. When she woke at 5:47 a.m., the first thing she did was rush to the kitchen. The cup was still there, and the world hadn't ended. David had walked past it multiple times and said nothing. She lasted until 7 a.m. before washing it. "That's still progress," Dr. Vasquez assured her. "You experienced the anxiety and survived it." The experiments gradually increased in intensity. Leave the bed unmade for an entire day. Allow dust to accumulate on one surface for a week. Let mail pile up on the counter for 2 days. Each experiment felt like stepping off a cliff. But something unexpected began to happen. In the spaces where Claire allowed imperfection, life began to creep in. The unmade bed invited David to linger in the morning, leading to conversations they hadn't had in years. He mentioned how much he missed their lazy Sunday mornings from early in their marriage, when they'd stay in bed reading newspapers and eating cereal. "We can do that again," Claire said, surprising herself. "Really? What about the bedding schedule?" Claire realized she'd been changing and washing their sheets so frequently that they never actually got to enjoy sleeping in them. The dusty coffee table became a place where Claire absent-mindedly set her teacup while reading, creating the first coffee ring their furniture had seen in a decade. Instead of immediately cleaning it, she stared at the ring for several minutes, fascinated by this evidence that someone had actually used their living room for living. The mail pile led to discovering an invitation to a friend's art show that she would have immediately filed away and forgotten. Claire hadn't seen Sarah in 2 years, not because they'd fought, but because Sarah's house was always messy, and Claire had gradually stopped accepting invitations rather than deal with the anxiety of imperfect environments. But as she looked at Sarah's invitation, Claire remembered how much she'd enjoyed their friendship before perfectionism had consumed her social energy. "Claire," Dr. Vasquez said during their 5th session, "what would happen if you told David about how you really feel in your perfect home? He might want to change things. Would that be bad? Change is unpredictable. What if unpredictable doesn't mean dangerous?" The concept was so foreign that Claire needed several sessions to fully consider it. But the real breakthrough came when Claire decided to reveal the chaos room to David. "I need to show you something," she said one evening, leading him to the hidden door in the basement. David's eyes widened as he saw the jumbled space filled with evidence of a less curated life. "How long has this been here?" "Years. I come here when I need to remember what it feels like to not be perfect." David sat down among the scattered books and craft supplies. "Can I sit with you here sometimes? You want to sit in my messy room?" "I want to sit with my real wife, not the curator." The distinction hit Claire like a revelation. She'd been so busy curating her life that she'd forgotten to live it. "I miss you," David continued. "I miss the woman who used to paint terrible watercolors and leave them all over the apartment. I miss the woman who would try new recipes and burn dinner and laugh about it, instead of throwing it away and ordering takeout from a restaurant that matched our kitchen aesthetic." Claire felt tears threatening. "I thought you wanted the perfect house. I wanted you to be happy." But somewhere along the way, the house became more important than the people living in it. That night, for the first time in 15 years, Claire and David made love in an unmade bed, surrounded by clothes that weren't immediately hung up, in a room that would require tidying the next morning. It was the most alive Claire had felt in years. But the journey toward imperfection wasn't linear. Claire found herself backsliding frequently, especially during stressful periods when the urge to control her environment became overwhelming. "I spent 4 hours yesterday organizing the pantry," Claire confessed during a therapy session. "It was already organized. I just needed to organize it again." "What was happening in your life yesterday?" "David's parents are coming to visit next week. I started imagining all the ways they might judge our house, our lifestyle, me. And organizing the pantry helped with that anxiety? Temporarily. But then I realized I'd lost 4 hours of my life to a pantry that didn't need organizing, and I felt even worse." Dr. Vasquez nodded. "Recovery from perfectionism isn't about never organizing again. It's about choosing when to organize and when to let things be imperfect." How do I know which is which? What does your body tell you when you're organizing from anxiety versus organizing for genuine need? Claire considered this. Anxiety organizing feels frantic, compulsive, like I can't stop even when I want to. Genuine organizing feels calmer, more purposeful. That's your internal compass. Learning to trust it takes practice. Over the following months, Claire began to distinguish between maintenance that served her life and maintenance that had become her life. She stopped changing their bed linens twice a week and started enjoying the way sheets felt after they'd been slept in for several nights. She allowed David to keep his coffee cup on his nightstand instead of immediately washing it each morning. She started cooking experimental dinners that sometimes failed spectacularly and laughed about it instead of hiding the evidence. The most significant change came when Claire decided to transform her Instagram account. Instead of her usual pristine perfection, she posted a photo of her kitchen island with breakfast dishes still on it, a newspaper spread open, David's coffee cup with a ring stain, and sunlight streaming through windows that hadn't been cleaned in a week. The caption read, "Learning that a house becomes a home when you stop arranging it and start living in it." The response surprised her. Instead of judgment, she received hundreds of messages from followers who said they'd been afraid to live in their own homes, afraid to let their children play freely, afraid to exist imperfectly. One message particularly struck her. "I haven't sat on my own couch in 6 months because I was afraid of messing up the pillows. Your post gave me permission to collapse after a long day. Thank you." Claire realized she'd been unknowingly promoting a prison disguised as paradise. "I've been thinking about what you said," Claire told Dr. Vasquez during their final regular session, "about humans being messy." "What about it?" "I think I was trying to transcend being human. I thought if I could control everything perfectly, I could somehow escape the uncertainty and vulnerability of being alive. And now? Now I think the uncertainty and vulnerability are the best parts. They're what make things interesting, surprising, worth experiencing. How does it feel to be imperfect?" Claire smiled. "Like coming home to myself." But perhaps the most profound change was in Claire's relationship with time. Instead of spending hours maintaining perfection, she began spending time creating experiences. She and David started cooking together on Sunday mornings, making elaborate brunches that left the kitchen messy until evening. She reconnected with Sarah and other friends whose homes had once triggered her anxiety. She took up pottery, an art form that required embracing imperfection and finding beauty in the uncontrolled. Her home began to reflect the fullness of their life rather than the absence of living. There were books open on tables, shoes by the door, photos from recent trips that hadn't been perfectly arranged. 6 months later, Claire's house still looked beautiful, but it looked lived in. The difference was palpable to visitors. The space felt warm, inviting, real. Her Instagram account had transformed from a shrine to perfection into a celebration of imperfect living. She posted photos of failed cooking experiments, rooms in the middle of being rearranged, gardens with both flowers and weeds. The account had fewer followers but more engagement. People were connecting with reality instead of aspiring to impossibility. Claire had discovered something revolutionary: the difference between a beautiful life and a perfect one. A perfect life was static, controlled, predictable. A beautiful life was dynamic, surprising, and wonderfully, chaotically alive. The most beautiful thing about her new life was that it included space for her to exist within it, not as a curator maintaining exhibits, but as a human being creating experiences. 1 year after beginning therapy, Claire hosted a dinner party, something that would have been impossible in her perfect house because actual entertaining would have disrupted the aesthetic. 8 friends gathered around their dining table, which was set with mismatched dishes that had sentimental value rather than matching plates that photographed well. They cooked together, laughed together, spilled wine on the tablecloth, and stayed long past the time Claire would have once needed to begin cleanup for the next day's photography. As she looked around the table at friends who felt comfortable putting their feet up, setting down drinks without coasters, and being thoroughly, messily human in her space, Claire felt something she'd been seeking through perfection all along: a sense of home. Claire Morrison had spent 15 years building a perfect prison. Now she was learning the art of beautiful living, where imperfection wasn't the enemy of beauty but the source of it. And every slightly messy, wonderfully imperfect day was proof that she'd finally found her way home, not to a perfect house, but to her own perfectly imperfect life. Have you ever created something so perfect that there was no room left for you to live inside it? Sometimes the most beautiful thing we can do is let go of perfection and make space for the magnificent messiness of being human. Names and details changed for privacy, inspired by Jungian therapeutic principles.